Hello everyone, it's July 9th, 2019. It's Tuesday, it's Harp Tuesday! Welcome to this week's edition, and today I'm gonna do a look at Hasselmans' Petite Berceuse. And of course, this is a piece that I played for my Harpist in a Tree episode, which I had a lot of fun with. If you haven't watched it, take a look, link up here. And it's a lovely little piece. Hasselmans, of course, was a French harpist and teacher, 1900s, and this is quite a nice piece. Not only just a nice piece, but also nice because it can be played on a small harp, and it doesn't have any lever changes. So it's in the key of C, doesn't go beneath this C, and it's quite a lovely thing. So I thought I would just kind of talk about it. And the piece, that's to me, has three distinct parts. So first we have this intro. And then from there we move into the berceuse, the lullaby. So this intro is almost, I hear it as a bit of a fanfare and rather triumphant, a little bit of a trumpets or something like that. And it's nice because it starts in unison. Both hands are playing the same thing an octave apart. Very handy. And what I would concentrate on this would be two things. One of them is trying to make sure that both hands are playing at exactly the same time so that we don't hear something like that. And this is a tricky thing. The first step is to be aware of it, to listen for it. So this is where recording yourself can be helpful. Listen, of course, when you're playing, but also record yourself and listen back. And it might be that you're right together, but it also might be that maybe the hands aren't always quite together and you're not aware of it. And of course, the first step to changing would be becoming aware of it, starting to listen for that. Sometimes by putting a little bit of extra pressure on the strings as you prepare. That can help things happen at the same time. Also, trying to analyze if you find that in that case, that was my left hand was a tiny bit ahead of my right hand each time. So again, when you listen back, can you tell, oh, that particular beat is not quite together, and is it always one hand or the other? And that can then, you can just practice doing the reverse. So if I find left hand's always playing in front of the right hand, I can try deliberately playing the right hand in front of the left hand. Is a way to try to work on evening out and playing everything at exactly the same moment. So that's just something to think about as you play that. And then of course thinking about the dynamics, how we want to shape this. So I kind of hear a bit of a crescendo from that first note to the second note, which makes sense also because we're going up, and generally, as a general rule, right, as things are going higher and higher, they often get louder, and as they go down, they often get softer. So certainly from this G to this C, a little bit of a crescendo, but maybe back off a little bit here. So then we're coming back down a little bit. And a hint of a crescendo there at the end, right? So kind of up and down and then up again, but not to a huge extreme. That maybe a crescendo through those first three notes. Maybe landing quite loudly on that last one. Play around with it by thinking about how you want to shape that little bit. And here, that short note, the weakest note, the last note of the bar, that second 16th, is in the weakest position. It's most at risk of getting lost. We'll hear the downbeat with this thumb. We'll hear this E, which is, we haven't played for a while. It's the first note that we're playing. But if we think a little bit of a crescendo there and making sure we hear that F, it's going to help lead us along. And now, change of moods. Thinking about the timing there and how we want to space those notes. So Because this now, I think this is the lullaby, right? This Petite Berceuse, this small lullaby. And instead of this kind of almost a hint of a staccato feeling on this opening, now it's very legato and very smooth and soft. So, trying to make it smooth and soft, it's all the same shape, right? Which is handy. If you're practicing slower, great spot to think about full close, bit of a wrist movement, bounce up and down. Repeat that note, going up one, up one, up one, up one, skip, 2 down, and then finish here. And again, thinking about how you want to shape this little. So in this case, he's marked in, right, a bit of a hairpin, a crescendo and decrescendo, and that's probably something that we're going to do. Again, that idea of going up, we're getting a little bit louder, and going down, we're getting a little bit softer, but thinking about the phrasing there. I'll talk about this accent and the sforzando later on, but anyway, we get this. Notice treble clef. And so here, definitely notice that the bottom line is now treble clef in the left hand. And it's good to read the notes, but it's also a really easy pattern to memorize. Because we have this chord, we have this C and G we've been playing forever in the left hand. Same C and G an octave higher in the right hand. So C, G, C, G. Left hand moves up, plays the notes the right hand just played. C, G. Right hand again goes an octave higher, C, G. And this last chord, if you think about a 4-note root position C chord, we've got these 2 notes with the right hand. Left hand is going to find the other 2 notes, so C and G and E and C. So it's kind of neat, right? Here's this part, and that's the tail end of that C chord. Now something to think about here, he's got a diminuendo, and for sure, right, things are kind of tailing off a little bit. We're going to have a new section coming in a moment. And all of this stuff is it's just accompaniment, right? It's just the sort of the everything finished here. And then this is just the sort of the reverberations of that. Softer. And thinking about the placement of this chord, we can take some time. Not too much, it's not the end of the piece, but not too little. And I think it's fairly easy to get soft as we go up. But the danger is that chord will jump out at us, because it's 2 notes, even though they're fairly small strings compared to some of the others. So, and sometimes there's that desire, you get to the end of a section and you're like, yes, I got there. So a great spot to think about. About the control of the volume, and that last chord is the softest in that sequence. So then, as I mentioned, I think I hear this piece as being 3 kind of distinct sections. So again, if this is a lullaby, this next section is maybe we're trying to go to sleep and we can't. We're restless and it's a bit more agitated. And this lovely little treble clef, notice. And then back to that Berceuse theme. So here, the nice thing is both hands find the same shape. Same shape except same start, but now 2 and 1 move up 1 string. They were on C and E, they move up to D and F. So even though we're doing this as a sequence of 4 notes, make sure that we're not finding them one at a time. Imagine, and you can practice playing them as a chord. So even though 4 is playing first and thumb's playing last, we find them as one group, one unit. A little bit tricky here because we want this to be smooth, and yet we're playing the F that the thumb just played, right? So if we place too early, we're going to hear that get stopped. We can certainly place the left thumb if we want. Or we can just get both fingers in position, hovering up there, and then fall down at the last minute. And again, we don't want that chord to be too loud compared to... In this case, it is maybe a bit of a crescendo. It is maybe the loudest point on that, but we don't want it to suddenly jump out, even though there's two strings being played instead of a single string. Then again, as we move down in pitch, the intensity, the volume level drops a little bit. Back to this first shape. Then this next sequence, I guess 2.5 bars, are probably the most challenging or just the most confusing because the patterns aren't quite as symmetrical. So we find 4 notes in the left hand. We could think of this as being a C chord, like a second inversion 3-note C chord, G, C, E, with an with a D thrown in there in the middle, right? So and the right hand is continuing up on a C chord, G, C, E. So if we left out that D and we just did this bar, they're notes that are part of a C chord with just a D passing tone in there. But the right thumb is on F, so this is, again, this second inversion C shape, but with an F on top. Reach down with 3 or 4, whichever you prefer. The sheet music, by the way, this is free, it's public domain. If you check the video description, you'll see a link to where you can download this. And I just want to mention that some of the written in fingerings, this isn't my copy. So anyway, yeah, it's they're not my fingerings or my brackets. So reaching down, finding that chord. And then this, I talked about this in this episode I did talking about sort of fingering and stuff like that, and you can see the link up here. But this is a spot where, again, it's maybe initially confusing, but all we're doing is placing 4 notes in a row starting from E, E, D, C, B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're going to play 1 and 4 at the same time. So there's the chord, and now we have 2 and 3 ready to go. So find everything here in the right hand, and again a diminuendo and a writ there, right? So if we've had this intensity, and we're back into this berceuse. And at the tail end of the berceuse, I mentioned the accent mark. So notice that G keeps being accented. And in a way, it's like, why is this being accented, right? If this is this lullaby, I feel that by the end of the lullaby, we've fallen asleep, or whoever we're playing this lullaby for has fallen asleep. So why are we accenting these notes? Let's not wake anybody up. Well, to me, what makes sense is to think of those notes as, for example, being the chime of a clock. So it's not a sharp accent, it's more of a gong. It's more of a sustained accent that keeps coming back in. And again, I think a big grandfather clock or something like that. So we get... So that kind of leaning on those notes a little bit so that they're loud, but trying to have a slow attack rather than a sharp attack. That to me is what makes sense for that. Rit poco poco, kind of gradually getting slower, and perdendosi means dying or fading away. So again, it just fades away. Something you can play around with those last, say, 3 chords that keep getting repeated. Is if you actually replace a little bit earlier, you can hear how it creates an interesting, right, almost staccato effect of where we kind of know something's going to happen, but we get this little brief pause. And it can be quite nice. Again, we don't want it to wake us up, but it can be effective. So something just kind of fun to play around with. So there you are, Hasselmans' Petite Berceuse. Again, if you want to play it yourself, the link to the sheet music is in the description down below the video. And hope you enjoyed that. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Cheers.